Welcome to the second episode of Off the Bench. This is going to be the week one recap. As you can see, I made some improvements to my already dazzling studio. I got a tapestry, really puts you in the game, really puts you in the frame of mind. But I'm going to tell you something. This is why you don't buy shit on Amazon. This is why you go to your mom and pop tapestry store so that you don't get the wrong size. Amazon sold it to me, sold me the dream. This is the tapestry you need to get to the next level of fantasy football commentary. And they sold me. And now I'm the sucker here with the tapestry that's not quite the right size. But you know what? We're going to keep going, keep chugging along. So welcome to week one recap. This is Off the Bench, and I'm your host, Brian Meckley. In week one, I think it's fair to say we learned a lot. You know, a wise man once said, "Don't trust a hoe," or "We don't love them hoes." And I think it's also fair to say in fantasy football that you can't quite trust star players. However, another wise man also said, "There are diamonds in the rough." And I think both of those sentiments are true as we head into our week one recap with honestly some great performances around the league, some real game-changing performances, and also some real shitty performances. Some the kind of performances you're watching the game and you're like, why did I draft this guy? You know, the ESPN analyst said that he was the go-to guy. He was going to get all the reps. It's lies, okay? It comes down to production, and it comes down to points. And some big names didn't get that this week, but we'll go over that. There's plenty of time for that. Now, in my personal opening week of fantasy football, I experienced both heartbreak and frustration, but I also experienced joy and elation, okay? And as you'll find, that's often the spectrum that you work with. Is that enough hand motions for everybody? That's often the spectrum that you're going to work with in fantasy football, because you can't get the joy and elation without the absolute frustration and honestly anger at your players and your team. I'll let you guys know, just for a frame of reference, my frustration came from losing in one of my leagues by 0.3 points. I had 129 points. My opponent had 129.3 points. Yeah, that's the equivalent of 3 yards or a third of a reception, basically. I mean, last time that I lost a contest by that small of a margin, I had a ruler in my hands and my pants were down. Yeah, that's a pretty bad joke. We're just going to keep rolling. But hey, if I could lose by 0.3 points with my first round draft pick, who's Mike Thomas, by the way, can't guard Mike. If I can lose by only 0.3 and my first round draft pick is only getting 4.5 points, a couple receptions and a few yards, then, you know, there's not too much to be mad about. Like there's worse things that could have happened. If he would have even put up a 10-point game, I would have came away with the victory. So that's an anomaly performance, as you'll often find in fantasy football, and you can't get too worked up. You just got to put the right players in the right spots, and most likely you're going to get victories. However, if Mike Thomas continues to have a performance similar to the likes of Bobby Boucher in the first half of Waterboy, then he can go ahead and ride the bench and feed some high-quality H2O to his boy Alvin Kamara, who's chewing up yards and getting touchdowns. All right? Because you do it twice. You do it once, there's room for forgiveness. Twice, you're on the hot seat. 3 strikes, you're out. Angels baseball, and Mike Thomas is now on the bench. But chances of that happening are slim to none. Okay, but enough of the negativity. I also want to mention my victory, which happened to be in the league in which I outlined my draft in the first episode of Off the Bench. I won by 116.2 to 96. So by all means, it's not an incredible victory where I feel so proud of my team, but it's a victory, and you take what you get out there. All right, it's a tough league. Fantasy football can be tough. You take victories any way you can get them. Okay, and now I did see though the potential that my roster has. I mean, my roster's got some great pieces. Some of them didn't quite pan out, but there's definitely potential to be had. You know, I didn't know how good Josh Jacobs was going to be in the opener. I really didn't. But he ended up getting 3 touchdowns. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 3 touchdowns. 25 carries, 138 yards, 3 touchdowns. On top of that, he hauled in 4 receptions for 46 yards on the receiving end. And he obviously had the best performance of any running back in the league in the first week. And I drafted this guy at 10th overall in a 12-man league. So down near the bottom of the heap in the first round. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to do this every week. You know, that you can't quite put up 3 touchdowns every week. But in all of the 2019 season, this guy had 7 touchdowns total on the season. He got 3 last night. He got 3 touchdowns last night. He had 138 yards rushing. I think this guy is poised to do some absolutely great things in Las Vegas this season. I think that it's safe to say this dude is the real deal. He's coming out hot. He's firing on all cylinders. And the Raiders, with John Gruden, are going to feed him and feed him and feed him until he can't eat anymore. And then they'll feed him some more. All right? They'll keep feeding him. You get so fat on the food of touchdowns and yards, and I'll be there reaping the benefits. Okay? Now that I've talked all my great hype on Josh Jacobs, who's making me look real smart right now, I also want to talk about my other running back, Raheem Mostert. And I mean, this guy came through in a big way. All right, he had 25 fantasy points. On top of that, he had 4 receptions, 96 yards, with a long 76-yard touchdown coming on a wheel route, which, look, I would have liked to see more out of him on the ground. This guy, I mean, I think he had like 50 yards rushing, 56 yards rushing. But if he can pick up 96 yards through the air and nevertheless get a 76-yard touchdown, and if he's still making plays, I'm okay with it. And it's obvious the Niners, they're feeding him, they're getting him involved in the offense, and he's obviously the lead back. All right, he's getting all the carries that I've expected him to get, and he's honestly more active in the passing game, at least in week 1, than I expected. I mean, I knew he would be involved, but I didn't know the extent, and I'm pretty excited with the involvement for Raheem Mostert, and he got me points, 25 fantasy points. So between my running backs, well, I think Josh Jacobs had like 35 fantasy points, which is like absurd, and then I had 25 from Raheem. And if it wasn't for these 2 guys, my running backs, I would have lost, because my receivers, as we'll get into, had a terrible time. They just underperformed. They really didn't step up, and I would have lost if it wasn't for these 2 running backs who absolutely put the team on their back quite literally. All right. And then another great performance on my end, the Money Badger, Michael Badgley, my kicker. He ended up hitting 3 field goals on 4 attempts. The one he missed was from 50 yards, so can't quite get too mad. I'd still like to see him hit it, which he can, and he will in the future. But he got me like 10 points, which was more than my star receivers got me. So Money Badger, if you haven't picked him up in your league, look for his name, Michael Badgley. Telling you, he's going to be one of the best fantasy kickers this season. And if we're talking about my receiving core, I had Keenan Allen, T.Y. Hilton, and George Kittle. And none of those guys performed. None of them got over 10 points. I was mostly surprised with George Kittle actually with all of them not getting over 10 points. However, Kittle did have an injury. I don't think it took him out of the game, but it definitely limited him. And I'll be looking on the injury reports to make sure that he's not hurt long-term or anything like that, or at least it won't be bothering him long-term. And as far as Keenan Allen, that dude was getting double-teamed all day. They really wanted to take him out of the equation. It opened it up for a little bit for Mike Williams. It opened it up for a little bit for Austin Eckler. We ended up getting the victory against the Bengals, so not too mad about it, but I definitely need to see more production out of Keenan Allen, and I think it's coming for sure. You can't judge too much off of just 1 week. There's plenty of football left. And then as far as T.Y. Hilton, I mean, the guy was targeted 9 times. He only got, what was this, like 4 receptions or something, and if that, 3. He didn't have a great performance, but he was targeted 9 times. He had 2 drops as well. I was watching the game. He had 2 drop balls, which is pretty disappointing. But Phillip Rivers was throwing his way, and it's clear that T.Y. is still the number 1 option, so I'll take it. I'll take him next week. I'll start him. And we'll see how it goes from there. Okay, now enough about me and about my personal fantasy life. No one really cares. I get it. Let's get down to the information that will actually help you in your fantasy league win next week. Here are my top waiver wire pickups for this week. Number 1, we have Adrian Peterson. Now, Adrian Peterson led the Lions' backfield, even though he's like 70 years old, with 114 yards on 17 carries, having really, honestly, an efficient game. And it's worth noting that DeAndre Swift dominated the receiving game out of the backfield. Adrian Peterson wasn't really involved in that. And honestly, trusting Lions running backs in fantasy is kind of like trusting Joe Biden to complete a coherent sentence on national television. Like it's just something that you're going to have to hope and pray happens. But look, Adrian Peterson, based on his week 1 performance, he looks like a pretty good streaming option, and he's only rostered in 21% of leagues. So chances are he's on your waiver wire, and he put up over 100 yards on the ground. So check him out. He might be useful for your team if you're weak on running backs. Number 2, we have Big Ben Roethlisberger. And Big Ben had 229 yards. He had 3 touchdowns, 2 of them going to Juju Smith-Schuster. And to be honest, it kind of looked like he was knocking off the rust a little bit early on in the game, but he definitely found his rhythm, and he looked like Big Ben. Now, I know that's saying a lot, but I think he's going to be better this season than what I thought, or maybe than what the NFL community or NFL fans might have thought. He isn't getting any younger. He's pretty old, but this dude's tough as nails, and he's not afraid to throw the ball. Okay, and with Juju there, I think he's a pretty good streaming option. He's rostered in 65% of leagues, so if you don't have a backup quarterback, look at him. Take a look. Maybe he earns a spot on your roster. Number 3, Joshua Kelly. And as a Chargers fan, I am super excited for Joshua Kelly. He had 60 yards on the ground. He had a touchdown. And this rookie is as much of a power back as you're going to get. This dude runs downhill. He lowers his shoulder pads, and he gets vertical. And when you have a guy like Austin Eckler in the number 1 spot, you really would love to have that power back kind of filling in behind him, maybe on a 3rd and short situation or goal line, which fantasy owners love goal line situations because that's where all the money is. That's where the points are. And I think Joshua Kelly becomes that guy for the Chargers. Obviously, he's not going to be the number one back. Austin Eckler has that privilege. But Joshua Kelly, I think, comes in at number 2, and I think he gets a lot of goal line work. So I think, let's see, he's rostered in only 11% of leagues. 11%. So chances are this guy's on your waiver wire, even in deeper leagues. I guarantee you, at least in 12-man leagues, this guy's going to get picked up rapidly. So get him while you can. Right now, it's only 11% roster rate, but I give it next week, and this guy's going to be closer to 60 or 70% roster rate after his showcase with the Chargers. And now number 4, we've got Malcolm Brown with the Los Angeles Rams. And this dude really did lead the Rams backfield. He had 79 yards on 18 carries and 2 touchdowns. And while this week will, or at least could be and probably is, an anomaly week for Malcolm Brown, I don't think he puts up that kind of production all the time. But I do think he earned a lot more reps with the Rams backfield, even with Cam Akers there. I think he carves out a bigger role for himself after that week 1 performance. And he's only rostered in 8% of leagues. Just like Joshua Kelly, I think by the end of this week, that number is going to be closer to 60 or 70. He definitely had a pretty great performance with the Rams, and I do think that he gets a little bit more noticed after week 1. Number 5, Frank Gore. Frank Gore's fantasy value skyrocketed when LeVeon Bell left the game. I think he had like a hamstring injury or something. It shouldn't be serious as far as the injury goes for LeVeon Bell, but he is doubtful for week 2. So that means at least for week 2, Frank Gore's fantasy value skyrockets, and he essentially becomes the lead back for that the Jets offense, which, I mean, let's be honest, it's not the best offense out there. You got probably better options, but Frank Gore is a dog. All right, this dude might be like 47. I don't know how old he is, but he's old. But he's tough, and he's a great running back, and he's only rostered in 3% of leagues. So with LeVeon Bell sitting on the bench, I think he does earn roster spots. So check him out if you're kind of short on running backs. Number 6, we've got Benny Snell Jr., who had honestly a pretty impressive performance. He filled in for James Conner, who left the game with like a minor injury. And I don't think Conner misses a lot of time here, but I do think Benny Snell earned his spot in that offense, filling in for James Conner. And it's funny, I always feel like the Steelers have this like running back that no one knows about, that all of a sudden they're starting running back, something happens, whether it's dramatic like Le'Veon Bell or an injury, knock on wood for James Conner. But Benny Snell might just be that kind of that running back that's in the shadows for the Steelers that ends up having that breakout season. I know that's a bold prediction. It's a hot take, but take a look. He's only rostered in 14.5% of leagues. So chances are he's on the waiver wire. And I mean, he picked up 113 yards on the ground and he averaged 6 yards per carry, which means he was super efficient. He definitely earned some more reps in my mind in that Steelers offense. Number 7, we've got Scotty Miller. And honestly, I kind of like this guy personally. Buccaneers receiver, third option behind Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. So by no means the number 1 guy. But he displayed a lot of great chemistry with Tom Brady. And if you can remember on the Patriots, it's always those guys you don't expect that Tom Brady makes into these fantasy monsters. And I think Scotty Miller might trend in that direction. I don't think it's too crazy to say that. I don't think it's too bold to say that. I mean, in week 1, he had 5 receptions for 73 yards, which is a great stat line for a PPR fantasy league. And even behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, it looked like Tom was looking his way. It looked like he was willing to feed him the ball. So I don't know if they have barbecues with each other's families. Maybe they, babysit each other's daughters or sons, or I don't know what their connection is. But Scotty Miller, mark my words, he's going to be kind of that guy that Tom Brady makes into a name, to be honest. And I think that's not too bold to say. And he's rostered in 6% of leagues, which means chances are he's on your waiver wire. Pick him up. Pick him up, stash him away, see what happens, okay? The value's there, and I think he does. I think it should be more in the 50% range as far as how many teams have him rostered. I do think he's more valuable than a 6% roster rate for sure. Number 8, we've got Paris Campbell. And if you can remember from my episode 1, I drafted Paris Campbell pretty late as kind of a filler, but I liked his speed. I like the fact that he ran a 4.3 40. I like the fact that Phillip Rivers is now at the helm of that offense, throwing the ball down the field. I liked all those things, and to me, I saw the writing on the wall. I think Paris Campbell is a close number 2 behind T.Y. Hilton, and it showed. I mean, the guy had a better stat line than T.Y. Hilton. I think he had like 5 receptions for 70-some yards, something like that. And I had him on my bench, by the way, which, sucks, but I'm glad he's on my roster, and he's only rostered in 30% of teams around ESPN. So he's unrostered in 70% of leagues, which is pretty startling in my opinion. I drafted the guy. But if Paris Campbell's available on your waiver wire, pick him up. He's a solid flex stream option, and I think he does a lot of great work with the Colts and with Phillip Rivers. Okay, now on to injury updates. Some pretty notable injuries, unfortunately, in week 1. First, we can just talk about Marlon Mack for the Indianapolis Colts. He tore his Achilles, out indefinitely, pretty much out the season. Sucks for Marlon Mack. I hope he recovers well. That he's a great running back. The Colts are definitely going to miss him. But what you as a fantasy owner can look at from this injury is Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. And chances are Jonathan Taylor's not on your waiver wire. That guy's definitely drafted. But Nyheim Hines, now let me tell you something. In the league that I lost in, I had benched Nyheim Hines, and he ended up getting like over 25 points. He had like 2 touchdowns and some absurd numbers. I don't even have them. I don't want to look at them, but he did great. And even before Marlon Mack got injured, Nyheim Hines was that guy for the Colts. He was that lead back, which to me, he was the third option. If you would have asked me before the game, hey, who's the first, second, and third option in the Colts backfield, I would have said number 1, Marlon Mack. He's earned it, hands down. Number 2, I'd say rookie Jonathan Taylor. Have you seen that guy's stat line in college? Have you seen his athleticism? He's a beast. Easily takes the number 2 spot. Number 3, I would have said Nyheim Hines. He comes in on some passing plays. He's a late round filler, probably on the waivers, not too much value. I was wrong. Many other people were wrong. This guy led the backfield. And then now with Marlon Mack out of the equation, look for Nyheim Hines. Okay, look for Nyheim Hines. If he might not be on your waiver wire, if he is, pick him up because his value just skyrocketed. Number 2, we've got LeVeon Bell with a hamstring injury, and it shouldn't be too serious. Okay, this isn't a crazy hamstring injury, but what it does do, he's doubtful to return for week 2. Like I said before, you got to look for Frank Gore off the waivers. He's going to be filling in that role while Le'Veon Bell is injured. Number 3, we've got Phillip Lindsay. The Broncos staff believes it's turf toe. And I started the guy in my flex when Courtland Sutton had an AC joint injury in practice. So I had to bench Courtland Sutton, and I put in Phillip Lindsay to kind of fill in. And he ended up getting injured after putting up 4 points. But it shouldn't be too serious. He should be good to go week 2. But I don't know how much I trust Phillip Lindsay with Melvin Gordon there. I know I was talking a lot of shit before with Melvin Gordon, but he didn't have the best game. He had a key fumble that really cost the Broncos, but he did kind of fill in for better or worse in an okay way for the Broncos. It'll be tough to trust Phillip Lindsay going forward. He'll probably be on my bench, but hey, the guy got turf toe, so shucks. Number 4, we've got Devante Parker, another mild hamstring injury. It's doubtful to return for week 2. The extent of the injury is not quite yet known, so if you do have Devante Parker on your roster, be mindful about that injury update going forward. Number 5, David Njoku, tight end for the Cleveland Browns. He sprained his MCL. Knee injuries suck. I feel so bad for the guy. The timetable for his return is about 3 weeks. You can look for Austin Hooper's fantasy value to just skyrocket because Austin Hooper already kind of was that lead tight end, but you take away David Njoku and he's the guy. So if you have Austin Hooper, throw a party because he's going to be putting up great numbers. Now, this part of the episode, the last part of the episode, is going to be maybe one of my favorite parts of this podcast, of this YouTube series. I'm going to go over notable spreads for any of you sports bettors out there, for anyone that likes Las Vegas or any of that. I'm going to go over spreads that jump out to me, and I'll, who knows, maybe you can make a quick buck. So the first spread I want to talk about, which is an absurd spread, Bills versus the Dolphins. The spread is at -4 Bills, which means the Bills are favored by 4 points. And only 4 points. I mean, how generous is that for Miami? Who made that spread? Who saw both the Bills' performance in week 1 and the Dolphins' performance in week 1 and thought, I don't know. I think the Dolphins can be within striking distance. I think it's going to be super close. Spread -4. I'll give them the field goal, but -4. I don't think they win by a touchdown. What are you talking about? Josh Allen's going to shimmy his way all over the Dolphins. I bet the house. If you like to bet, and by no means I am not encouraging gambling, because God forbid, right? God forbid. But anyway, if you are into it, bet the house on the Bills. That spread, -4, is ridiculous. Okay, they're going to win by a couple touchdowns at least, in my opinion, unless the Dolphins pull off some miracle, which could happen, but it's not likely. I'd bet the house on the Bills. Next up, we've got Detroit at Green Bay with a -5.5 for the Packers. And now, look, the Packers usually have the Lions number in general. I got friends and family in Michigan, and I've watched plenty of Lions games. We'll have Thanksgiving dinner, and we'll watch the Lions, and sometimes they play the Packers. And you know what? They usually don't win. And it's not me knocking the Lions. It's just, for some reason, the Packers always have it. And it's a home game for Green Bay, which is something, I don't know if they're going to have fans, but still. Okay, Lambeau is something special. And I don't think Detroit goes in there and I think that and gets close, to be honest. The spread's 5.5 points. I think the Packers win by at least a touchdown. Okay, so I think they cover the spread, and I think it's a pretty safe bet to make. Rams at Eagles. Spread, -2.5 points for the Eagles, which, wow. Like I said, I don't know who's making these spreads. Who watched the Rams beat Dallas in week 1 and then watched the Eagles lose badly to a subpar Washington football team and then decided that the spread made sense at 2.5 for the Eagles? Not only do I think the Rams are going to win, I think they're going to win by quite a bit. Okay, so bet, if you're a bettor, if you're a gambler, this one is a great one to bet on. Rams at Eagles, -2.5 for the Eagles. Rams are going to sweep it up, and you're going to get some good money on that one. Saints at Raiders. This line, or the spread, we've got -5.5 points for the Saints. And I think the Saints easily cover the spread. Look, I think the Raiders look good in week 1. And I do think it's a factor that this is going to be their first home game in Las Vegas in Allegiant Stadium. All good stuff. Josh Jacobs, great. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're a terrible football team. What I am saying is the Saints just dismantled the Buccaneers with Tom Brady. They dismantled them, okay? And I don't think the Raiders are going to come within striking distance, let alone less than a touchdown. At a spread of 5.5. I think the Saints easily cover it. I think it's a pretty safe bet. All right, well, that's it. I mean, that's all I've got as far as spreads, as far as waiver wire pickups. I'm having fun with this so far. I mean, as you can see, I've got my little studio here. I've got the undersized tapestry in the back. I've got my microphone here. I'm having fun, and I'm going to keep it coming. I'm going to keep posting as much as I can as far as updates. I will try to get the episodes out before Tuesday night so that you can act a little bit quicker on the waiver wire. But yeah, I mean, let me know too. If you see an episode and you think you've got a cool pick, or you just want to talk fantasy football or sports, or you just want to like hit me up, just, contact me. I don't know, subscribe. I've got like 2 subscribers right now. So shout out to my 2 subscribers. You guys are great. You guys are day one fans. And when I'm all at the top, when I'm making Joe Rogan money with Spotify, I'll hit you guys up and be like, I'll buy you a beer or something. But hey, the way I look at it, 2 subscribers, that's a 200% increase from when I started. If you talk about margins, great margin. I'm having fun. We're here. We're drinking Ballast Point. Shout out to Ballast Point, San Diego's own. Great beer. We're talking shit. It's a great time. So I'm excited about football season. I thought COVID might have taken it from us, but it didn't. And shout out to all the players and the coaches and all the staff that are making this happen. Really exciting. And I'm going to come back at you next week for a little week 2 recap, some more waiver wire picks, and some more spreads. So I'll catch you guys later.